Exposed. The Apache's incredible fight against snake venom, 3 life-changing secrets revealed. Clara's hands trembled as she adjusted the faded presentation slides in her modest classroom. The Arizona sun streamed through the small windows, casting sharp shadows that mirrored her racing thoughts. She could feel the skepticism radiating from her students, their eyes glued to their smartphones, enthralled by the allure of big pharma over the wisdom of her ancestors. "Why should I listen to an Apache herbalist?" their expressions seemed to say, the frustration twisted in her gut, a knot of despair. Her grandfather, the revered keeper of their family's herbal secrets, had taught her that the flora around them was imbued with healing power. But this affluent community, blinded by privilege, consumed far too easily the flashy cures of modern medicine. How could she compete with sleek advertisements that touted instant fixes? It was a battle of wills, and often it felt as if she was losing. Day after day, her heart battled between pride for her culture and an aching self-doubt, gnawing at her dreams of spreading her ancestral knowledge. She glanced at her grandfather's old photographs, his wise smile a beacon of hope, yet a reminder of the weight of expectations. Would anyone ever open their minds to the teachings that had been ingrained in her blood for generations? Clara's world shattered when that familiar ringtone called her to the hospital one late afternoon. Her grandfather had been bitten by a rattlesnake. Panic surged through her as she drove, a storm of anxiety brewing with each mile. He was taken to the very institution that dismissed her every teaching, a place where the warmth of traditional remedies was extinguished by their obsession with litigation and profit. Dread coiled in her chest. Once at the hospital, she was met with cold stares and dismissive comments. "You should let the professionals handle this," they said, their arrogance evident as they prepared the synthetic antivenom. The truth, though, was buried beneath layers of corporate greed. After returning home, Clara stumbled onto a report, revealing unsettling truths about the drug's ineffectiveness and the cover-ups that allowed its continuation in the market. It lit a fire inside her, a glimpse of possibility amid encroaching darkness. With renewed determination, she began to research, her nights consumed by the secret language of plants and their ancient healing capabilities. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every concoction she brewed, Clara realized that reclaiming her legacy came with significant risk. Her mind raced to the consequences if she failed. What if her grandfather succumbed to the venom, while the world continued to ignore the herbal knowledge that flowed through her veins? Just as the steps towards justice solidified beneath her, she found herself facing Jake, a scientist disillusioned by the very industry she loathed. His skepticism reflected her fears, but beneath it lay a shared pain. The two joined forces, yet Clara's battles were only beginning. As she prepared to confront the pharmaceutical giant, the stakes grew darker. The weight of her ancestors' whispers loomed ever heavier on Clara's shoulders, their legacy hanging in the balance. With each passing moment, doubt crept alongside conviction, whispering insecurities into her heart. The tension thickened, tightening around her, leaving her on the edge of her resolve. Would she summon the strength to unearth the truths hidden by an entire industry? The shadows of uncertainty closed in, pushing her towards an inevitable reckoning that could shatter everything she held dear, making her question if she truly had the power to heal. The urgency of her mission filled Clara with a feverish energy as she submerged herself in research. The frayed notebooks of her grandfather lay scattered across her desk, each page unveiling the rich tapestry of healing traditions she had always taken for granted. For the first time, the equations of efficacy and synergy danced in her mind alongside the botanical illustrations. Her grandfather's teachings were no longer just ancestral whispers. They were a vital lifeline. Yet doubts nagged at her resolve. Each night, as she meticulously prepared herbal extracts, the familiar mantra of "what if" echoed relentlessly. What if she miscalculated the dosage? What if she inadvertently caused harm instead of healing? The thought of failing her grandfather turned her stomach. She could almost hear his gentle admonishment. Knowledge is only as powerful as its application. The pressure mounted as she understood the weight of his legacy resting upon her shoulders, forcing her to confront her own insecurities. Jake, although skeptical, observed her passion closely. "You truly believe in what you're doing," he remarked during one late-night session, a flicker of respect breaking through his measured demeanor. Clara looked up, momentarily startled by the sincerity in his voice. "This isn't just about belief," she replied with newfound conviction. "This is about reclaiming a narrative that needs to be told." His nod signaled an understanding, but she sensed he still harbored questions about the science backing her claims. Over the next weeks, they dove deeper into the abyss of corporate corruption and scientific neglect. Clara fueled her presentations with data showing discrepancies in anti-venom studies, juxtaposing them against the herbal compounds she had learned to formulate. The more she explored, the more empowered she felt, as if each revelation chipped away at the chains of self-doubt. Between doses of herbal extracts and punctuated by fervent discussions with Jake, a clear picture emerged. Traditional medicine could not only stand alongside modern contributions, but in many cases outperform them. But as the revelations crystallized, so did the risks. Clara's drive ignited a fire of resistance in local pharmaceutical representatives. Dismissed as an uninformed herbalist by those who opted for the safety of convention, she felt the encroaching shadows of backlash lurking at the edges of her newfound achievements. With each interaction, encounters turned hostile, and Clara felt the tension mount. They would not allow her to disrupt the facade of a profitable industry. When she received a notification about a forthcoming community health forum in her town, a spark ignited within her. Here, she had a platform. Here, she could share the truth about the antivenom's inadequacy and the profound potential locked within her ancestral wisdom. But equally, apprehension clutched her heart. Would they listen? Or would the fear of challenging established norms silence her before she could even speak? Clara knew she wouldn't face this alone. She reached out to Jake, her ally in this burgeoning war against ignorance. But now it was time to step into the spotlight. Could she articulate her beliefs with clarity amidst the noise of cynicism? The moment of truth hovered just out of reach, thick with anticipation and given urgency by her grandfather's fading condition. It was a race against time, and the pressure was mounting. As the day of the forum loomed closer, doubt and determination fought for dominance. Clara's gut churned with anxiety, but she pressed on, driven by the knowledge that her grandfather's life and her legacy hinged upon this moment. The stakes were higher than ever, teetering on the brink of a reckoning that could alter everything she thought she knew. With the sun setting behind her, Clara stood before the mirror, inhaling deeply to stifle the wavering in her chest. The time had come to face the audience that would either embrace her truth or condemn her ignorance. Would she rise to the occasion, or would fear consume her? She swallowed hard, knowing that on the other side of uncertainty lay the answer to what she truly believed in and who she could become. The stage was dimly lit, save for a single spotlight aimed directly at Clara as she stepped forward, her heart pounding in sync with the whispers of doubt racing through her mind. The room was filled with faces, some curious, some skeptical, others outright hostile. This was her moment, but anticipation morphed into a leaden weight as she reminded herself what was at stake: her grandfather's legacy, her own truth, and the lives that could be transformed by it. Taking a deep breath, she opened her notebook. The words her grandfather had written echoed in her mind, grounding her in purpose. Knowledge is the bridge that connects us to our potential. She let this mantra guide her as she raised her gaze toward the audience. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about the incredible resilience of traditional healing methods and their potential to surpass modern treatments for venomous bites, particularly anti-venom, she began, her voice strong despite the turbulence in her chest. As she presented her findings, Clara felt a shift in the atmosphere. The tension that had threatened to suffocate her transformed into a palpable electricity. She detailed the statistical discrepancies in the anti-venom data, correlating them with her own research on herbal remedies. The ancient practices from her grandfather's teachings interwove with contemporary science, forming a narrative both compelling and factual. Yet, In the back of her mind, she could sense the looming doubt radiating from the representatives of the pharmaceutical companies seated toward the front, their scowls as sharp as daggers. When Clara made the bold claim that her grandfather's formulation showed a higher rate of efficacy than commercially available antivenoms, the audience gasped. Energy surged within her. She was not just a voice, but a vessel of knowledge demanding to be heard. She moved through the slides with a calculated precision, capturing not only data, but also the passion rooted in her lineage. There was an urgency in her eyes that spoke of an unyielding necessity, a plea for their open minds. But then, the first jarring interruption came from the pharmaceutical representative sitting with arms crossed. "You're just an herbalist, with no formal training. What qualifies you to make such claims?" he challenged, his tone dripping with condescension. Clara felt a moment of panic bubble beneath the surface, but she quickly steadied herself. "It's true, I may not have a white coat, but I have something invaluable, generations of knowledge tested and refined by experience." The words spilled from her mouth with newfound tenacity. "I have a duty to honor that tradition and explore it through a scientific lens." With each rebuttal, she could sense her conviction growing. Their dismissiveness ignited an unexpected fire in her soul. She wasn't simply defending herself, she was fighting for the integrity of the very essence of healing. It was about lighting a flame in the darkness of ignorance, a spark against the might of a billion-dollar industry. The debate erupted, voices clashing and rising in the little room. Yet Clara held her ground, her heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. This was not merely a forum, it was a battleground where knowledge would be the sword and her ancestors' wisdom the shield. As she wrapped up her presentation, Clara's chest swelled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "What I urge you to consider isn't just a question of belief, but a challenge to the status quo. Healing can come from the earth and our ancestors just as it can from laboratories." The questions fired back at her, some probing, others hostile, but Clara met them head-on. Here, she was not only advocating for her grandfather's legacy, but reclaiming her identity as a healer. The words flowed with the determination to prove both her theory and her worth. As the crowd dispersed, Clara's heart pounded with adrenaline laced with uncertainty. Had she made an impact, or merely fueled the fire of their collective disdain? She felt Jake's presence beside her, his firm grip a reminder that she wasn't alone in this fight. But looming beyond all her triumphs were darker clouds, revealed in the glances exchanged between industry representatives, the shadows of targeted backlash threatening to burn her words to ash. In this moment of triumph, she realized that the road ahead held as much danger as promise. Could she withstand the inevitable repercussions that would follow? The journey toward truth had begun, but it seemed clarity would come with a steep price, a price she had yet to comprehend fully. What awaited her next? Determined yet anxious, Clara stepped off the stage, leaving behind not just a presentation, but the unmistakable beginning of a revolution within herself. With the evening's presentation etched in her mind, Clara stepped into the crisp, cool air outside the venue. The applause from the audience echoed in her ears, but it was quickly overshadowed by the unsettling thought of potential retribution. Doubts, once dormant, now clawed at the edges of her resolve, reminding her of the precariousness of her bold stance. Jake remained by her side, his silent presence offering support, though she could sense his own tension vibrating beneath the surface. He tilted his head slightly, his brow furrowed in concern. "You really hit them hard in there," he said, attempting to break the silence. Clara nodded, feeling the exhaustion seep into her bones. "It's only the beginning," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I just need to keep pushing. If I back down now, everything I've worked for, it'll mean nothing." The words manifested her determination, but they didn't fully erase that creeping fear gnawing at her gut. As they made their way to her car, Clara's mind raced with the implications of her actions. She knew the pharmaceutical industry wasn't going to let a simple herbalist challenge their decades-old narrative without retaliation. The path ahead wasn't just about presenting information, it was a fight. Over the next few days, Clara dove headfirst into research. She started documenting every interaction from the presentation, combing through her notes, and refining her data. Each new piece of evidence filled her with a fierce urgency that felt like electricity coursing through her veins. What had begun as an academic pursuit was morphing into a crusade of sorts, a fight for recognition and respect that spanned generations. Yet, with every breakthrough, Clara faced new complications. Online forums were filled with detractors. Comments about her lack of formal training proliferated. Skepticism about her grandfather's methods echoed loudly in the digital space. There was no gentle way to acknowledge the power dynamics that played out in the world of medicine, particularly when ancient practices clashed with modern science. On a particularly tumultuous afternoon, Clara received an email that sent her heart plummeting. It was a notice for a formal challenge to her claims, supposedly organized by the representatives she had faced at the conference. They intended to host a public debate, pitting her against seasoned scientists and industry experts, a seemingly insurmountable task aimed at dismantling her credibility. The weight of dread pressed heavily on her shoulders, but anger quickly swept over her like wildfire. They underestimated her. She realized this was an opportunity, not only to defend her grandfather's legacy, but also to solidify her right to stand as an authority in her field. Instead of backing down, Clara felt the burning need to seize this moment, to educate and advocate fiercely. Clara immediately started preparing for the challenge, her mind racing with strategies and points to address. She reached out to peers in the herbalist community, tapping into a network she hadn't fully engaged with before. The more she connected, the more she uncovered hidden gems of knowledge and practice that would bolster not only her case, but also her confidence. With renewed vigor, Clara spent late nights drafting counterarguments and collating data. Each piece of research reminded her of her purpose and her drive, casting aside the suffocating cloak of doubt. She was more than just her grandfather's granddaughter. She was a force in her own right. But as the debate approached, Clara couldn't shake the sense that the opportune moment was also a moment of reckoning. The lines were drawn, and a gesture of solidarity or defiance lingered palpably in the air. The night before the challenge, sleep eluded her, consumed by thoughts of what lay ahead. This was a moment she couldn't afford to fail. It wasn't just about her, it was about voicing a truth far older than herself. Clara stared at her reflection in the darkened window, determination glinting in her eyes, but beneath it lingered the weight of desperation mixed with hope. Could she truly face the giants of the industry, or would their immense force be too much? The clock ticked down to the inevitable confrontation, and with it, the fear of not being enough began to crystallize painfully in her mind. What awaited her in that debate hall would test every facet of her resolve, but the most pressing question loomed larger. Would she emerge as a champion of a forgotten truth, or would she fade beneath the overwhelming tide of their authority? As dawn broke, Clara was already awake, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the impending debate. She wouldn't allow doubt to swallow her. Instead, every flicker of anxiety transformed into a fiery motivation. The scale of the challenge was immense, but it also unveiled something deeper within her, an intrinsic resilience that had long been dormant. With the sun shyly peeking through the curtains, she set about preparing her notes, allowing the quiet morning to ground her. Each statistic reinforced her resolve, while historical anecdotes about herbal medicine wrapped her with a cloak of ancestral strength. Clara interlaced her grandfather's wisdom with modern studies, crafting a narrative that went beyond mere science. It became a reclaiming of stories long silenced by dismissive voices. Her phone vibrated strategically, breaking her concentration. It was Jake, sending a final message of encouragement. As she read it, something stirred within her. A sense of kinship and larger purpose ignited a flame of courage. With each supportive word, she recognized the power of belief, not just from others, but within herself. Throughout the day, Clara surrounded herself with the herbal community, fueling each interaction with purpose. Through vigorous discussions and passionate exchanges, she discovered reservoirs of knowledge previously unplumbed. Each person shared unique perspectives, expanding her understanding and solidifying her belief in the potency of natural remedies. It wasn't just her grandfather's legacy she carried. It was a collective wisdom of generations that needed to be acknowledged and respected. Yet as she delved deeper, a nagging voice whispered caution. She couldn't ignore the strict division that marred the landscape. Clara knew that the opposing team would wield more than mere science. They would employ the weight of influence and the comfort of tradition that favored pharmaceuticals. The thought provoked a flurry of doubt. she massaged her temples, forcing herself to breathe through this moment of vulnerability. Positive self-talk became her armor. I carry the knowledge, the data, the spirit of those who've been overlooked. Each reassurance became a stepping stone, a way to dismantle the internal barriers erected by external skepticism. As night fell, she positioned her materials meticulously at her desk. The layers of notes, printouts, and reminders felt like a fortress, each component cemented with conviction. But with the clock edging toward midnight, fatigue began to tether her focus. She shook it off, pouring coffee into her mug, a trusted companion in times like these. In the quiet of her space, the intensity of her mission enveloped her. Clara's mind wandered to a time long before a debate had ever formed. Her childhood memories danced vibrantly in her mind. The scent of herbs mingling with warm sunlight pouring through the kitchen, the wisdom of her grandfather imparted with love and respect. She recognized now that these memories were not simply artifacts of her past, they were the roots of her current endeavor. Clara flipped through her notes one last time. Each page bore the weight of her journey, underscored by her fears and aspirations. A realization took shape. She was not merely defending a stance or engaging in a debate. She was elevating a philosophy, challenging an entire way of thinking that had relegated wisdom to mere anecdote. When she finally lay down to sleep, her mind buzzed with a kaleidoscope of thoughts, strategies, counterarguments, and intricate narratives of knowledge. The rising sun would soon herald a day that could shift the course of her life. A mix of excitement and dread danced within her, still tethered to the weight of the moment. But this time, she held onto the faith that echoed louder than doubt. As she drifted into a restless slumber, a question crystallized in her mind. Would she find the courage to amplify the voices that were often left unheard? Or would she succumb to the whispers of inadequacy? Tomorrow came with the promise of confrontation, and with it, the chance to reshape her destiny forever. Clara woke to a cacophony of thoughts, her heart racing as the reality of the day settled in. The debate wasn't just a test of ideas, but a profound reflection of her personal beliefs and the legacy she carried. Each minute stretched her patience, plucking at the strings of her determination. This was it, a moment she had quietly prepared for her entire life. In front of her mirror, she practiced her stance, articulating phrases that had swirled in her mind throughout the night. Herbal medicine is not just an alternative, it's a potential savior, she muttered, watching her reflection absorb her passion. Yet completing the sentence left an unsettling echo. If she proclaimed herbal remedies as crucial, could she handle the scrutiny? Could she stand firm against the more polished, persuasive counterarguments of the opposing team? Next came the choice of her outfit, a silent armor she hoped would bolster her confidence. Clara dressed with intention. Each piece not only reflected her personality, but also signaled her commitment to the craft. The vibrant colors echoed the life of the herbs she revered. As the fabric wrapped around her, she felt a surge of belonging to something greater than herself, a synthesis of tradition and modernity resonating through her choices. Time ticked away mercilessly. As she drove to the venue, Clara's mind raced, reliving her childhood anecdotes infused with herbal teachings. She recalled an incident where her grandfather had treated a neighbor's snakebite with a homemade poultice of yarrow and plantain. It not only healed the wound, but also solidified her belief in the power of nature. That memory emerged as a strategic counterargument, an embodiment of the principle that healing extends beyond pharmaceutical solutions. Getting closer to the venue intensified her anxiety, yet it ignited a rebellious fire within her. Who was to say that the knowledge passed down through generations was any less valid than clinical trials? This thought churned relentlessly, pushing her toward a mentality shift. Her fears could either anchor her or propel her. Upon arrival, the expansive stage loomed before her, a battlefield adorned with a glossy sheen. Clara observed the opposing team setting up their materials with polished confidence, lending an air of intimidation. But instead of shrinking under the weight of self-doubt, she harnessed that feeling, morphing it into a fuel that burned peculiarly bright. This was her moment to challenge the status quo. As the debate commenced, Clara watched each speaker carefully. They articulated their points with precision, deploying scientific data that could overwhelm an unprepared psyche. Yet their arguments were riddled with a detachment from human experience. The deficit in genuine connection was palpable, and Clara sharpened her focus, readying her approach for the inevitable clash. When her turn arrived, the world narrowed to the space between her heart and voice. Standing before the audience, she conjured the spirit of those who had come before her, her grandfather's wise eyes, the community of herbs that had first nurtured her understanding. "Today, I bring forgotten stories back to life," Clara began, allowing the weight of her words to resonate deeply. As she progressed, she invoked personal narratives, blending them with her research to elevate the discourse beyond sterile data. With every sentence, doubt began to dissolve, replaced by the strength of authenticity. Clara drew on the neurochemistry of herbal medicine, explaining its history, efficacy, and potential as a healing modality free from the constraints of modern dismissals. However, as she concluded her argument, a sudden realization gripped her. This debate was not merely about herbal medicine. It mirrored a deeper fight against a controlling narrative that had left countless voices unheard. In that moment, Clara felt a pang of responsibility, not just to present herbalism's merits, but to defend the very essence of ancestral wisdom buried by time. As the rebuttals flew from the opposing team, filled with confidence and facade, Clara's resolve only deepened. She was committed to revealing the truths that had been obscured, and a new clarity emerged. She would not walk away unnoticed, but could she prepare for the counterattacks that would relentlessly test her convictions? The stage was set for not just a debate, but a confrontation that could redefine how the world viewed traditional healing. Clara understood that the outcome wasn't just about victory or defeat. It was about illuminating archaic wisdom for the world to see. The question lingered in her mind like a haunting melody. Would her voice be strong enough to challenge the tide of established norms, or would she fade amidst the clamor? As the debate concluded and the crowd's applause reverberated, Clara stepped off the stage, heart still racing from the adrenaline of performance. Applause felt foreign yet exhilarating, but as nervous energy gave way to reflection, doubt seeped in. The hollowness of celebration contrasted starkly with the simmering questions she had ignited. Had she transcended the mere act of voicing her beliefs, or had she merely scratched the surface? Sitting in the dimness of the green room, Clara replayed her performance in her mind. Each well-articulated argument was marked by moments of vulnerability, rawness that seemed to tug at her understanding of success. As her passion spilled forth, she noticed a hesitant glance from one of the judges, which frazzled her focus momentarily. Perhaps the world wasn't ready to embrace what she had so fervently advocated. Clara's fingers subconsciously danced over a lighted edge of the table. She needed to channel her shaken resolve into something tangible. If her words had resonated, how could she ensure they continued to resonate outside those walls? The thought quickly turned into a resolve. The debate was only the beginning. She had created a ripple, and now it was her responsibility to fan the flames, even if the task felt insurmountable. Encouraged by her thoughts, she sought solace in her notebook, the pages filled with scribbles of ideas and insights that had brewed in the depths of her mind. It was time for a plan. Clara envisioned a community workshop, an intimate gathering where she could delve into the practicalities of herbal medicine and its real-world implications. It would be a direct confrontation against the skepticism she encountered, a chance to foster real connections, unfiltered by the constraints of academic settings or formal debates. But as she outlined her vision, self-doubt crept in. Would her knowledge be enough to attract an audience? Would she be taken seriously outside the debate stage? These nagging thoughts were like shadows at dusk, lurking at the edges, threatening to engulf her intentions. However, Clara had learned to confront her fears head-on. Shifting her mindset, she reminded herself that if she could command a room filled with experts, there was no reason to shy away from her community. Determined, she committed to reaching out to local health food stores that might lend their support. Perhaps they would sponsor the event, or even provide space. Day after day, Clara poured efforts into marketing, weaving together stories and crafting a narrative that would draw people in. It was as vital as any argument she had presented. The stories of her grandfather, local healing practices, and the transformative stories of those who found solace in herbs must be told. Even as her preparations gained momentum, a nagging doubt lingered. Each time she shared her upcoming workshop plans with friends or acquaintances, the fear of dismissal resounded loud in her chest. What if they only humored her enthusiasm? Was she trying to rebuild an old legacy upon a crumbling foundation? But the voice of her grandfather persisted, echoing in Clara's mind. True healing required patience and trust in the process. It meant nurturing the old while inviting in the new, a delicate dance she was more than willing to embrace. There was strength within her, a conviction that deserved to be manifested beyond the stage. As she finalized the details, the duality of anticipation and trepidation electrified her. With her community workshop set to launch, Clara grasped the profound power her voice could yield. It was time to address the very roots of her passion, transforming the debate's echoes into an impactful chapter of her journey. Yet, even as the date loomed ahead, a realization washed over her. The stakes had grown higher. In defying perceptions, she was not just stepping into the arena, she was implicating herself in a much larger encounter of legacy versus modernity. Could she truly illuminate the path of herbal wisdom amid doubt? As the invitation emails sent off one by one, Clara's heart thrummed with both optimism and fear. This was a new beginning, a test beyond theoretical battles. Her mind raced ahead, realizing one thing: the moment for action had erupted. Her commitment to reclaiming forgotten wisdom had just begun. Would she, in this new venture, finally discover whether her voice and knowledge could penetrate the static of skepticism? Clara awakened the next morning with a newfound urgency humming beneath her skin. Today was the day she would finalize everything for her workshop, yet the weight of anticipation was heavy. Each tick of the clock felt relentless, mocking her as she brewed her morning tea, a calming ritual. The steam curled around her, bringing back memories of her grandfather sharing stories over simmering herbs. It was both comforting and unnerving. His warmth guided her, yet the fear of not measuring up to his legacy lingered palpably in the air. With a fortified resolve, Clara settled at her kitchen table, strewn with papers, schedules, flyers, and goal lists, everything she'd needed to put this workshop together. The sun streaming through the window bathed the pages in a glow that ignited her determination anew. But just as she reached for her pen to write one final invitation, her eyes landed on her laptop. The cursor blinked at her like a challenge, reminding her of the digital age that was both an ally and enemy. Was she leveraging social media to amplify her efforts? Realizing she had avoided its power, Clara's heart raced. She could create a Facebook event, share her research, publish snippets of her discussion topics, but her mind recoiled at the thought of exposing herself to the scrutiny of online commentary. What if people ridiculed her approach? What if they dismissed the very knowledge she was striving to reclaim? This cycle of doubt, however, was tiresome. Clara straightened her back and took a deep breath. It was time to push past the suffocating voices of fear. She recalled the moments on stage during the debate, the fire she felt, the weight of her arguments that had found life in front of an audience. Maybe this social landscape could be an even grander stage. She clutched her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen as she began to draft a short post about the workshop. Her fingers hesitated, heart thrumming in her chest like a fugitive drum. What if she failed? The performance anxiety, once reserved for debate stages, now reached for this venture that felt far more personal. As she posted the event and hit share, Clara trembled at the leap into cyberspace. Her words floated into an unknown realm, the community potentially watching. She felt both exposed and liberated. With one click, she opened the floodgates. That evening, the first responses trickled in. Questions, expressions of curiosity, and a bit of skepticism, which felt familiar yet strange. Instead of recoiling, Clara leaned into these interactions, crafting thoughtful replies that not only educated but also invited deeper discussions about the relevance of herbal remedies in the modern world. She took risks, posed challenging questions back, and for the first time, it dawned on her. This wasn't just about her legacy or proving herself, it was about sparking dialogue. But just as she began to feel a wave of momentum, an unexpected comment arrived, tainted with sarcasm and doubt. "Sure, let's go back to primitive remedies. This isn't the Dark Ages." The breath caught in her throat, her heart racing as the world seemed to tilt under her feet. There it was, the embodiment of every fear she had. Clarity struck like a lightning bolt. She had to confront this not only for herself, but for all those whose voices had been silenced. With her fingers poised above the keyboard, she realized this was a moment to transform skepticism into an opportunity for conversation. Drawing from the depths of her conviction, Clara typed back. She spoke about the importance of considering multiple facets of healing, validating both modern and traditional practices. Each word felt like a glimmer of power pushing through the barriers of doubt. As she hit send, a profound sense of resolve surged within her. Yet beneath that resolve was an undercurrent, a whisper of how far she was from being fully accepted in this dialogue. Clara now stood perched on a precipice. With every provocative comment, her journey would demand increasingly bold truths. As she returned to her notebook, a disquieting thought clawed at her mind. Was she prepared for the giants of skepticism that loomed ahead? The workshop was her stage, but the response she sought was still shrouded in the unknown. As the day of the workshop approached, Clara understood that this was only the beginning. Would she gather the courage to continue the fight against skepticism, forging a path for herself and those who shared her beliefs? The time was creeping closer when she would have to confront not just the doubts of the world, but the shadows lurking within herself. The sun dipped lower in the sky as the final days before her workshop dwindled. Clara's heart raced, a surging tide of anticipation laced with anxiety. Every early evening felt like a deadline looming, marked with a relentless pressure that pinched at her resolve. The weight of her ambitions pushed against her, urging her to seek not just success, but clarity in her mission. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications piling up like a stacking deck of cards. Each comment and question provided motivation, yet each critical remark twisted her stomach. The one sarcastic comment festered, a lingering thorn in her side. Clara often found herself retreating to the safe cocoon of her kitchen, surrounding herself with the familiar aroma of herbs, a small sanctuary from the world's skepticism. One particularly quiet afternoon, Clara sat with her notepad, the weight of potential dragging her thoughts in all directions. She began sketching new ideas, strategies for engaging her anticipated audience. Each word was deliberate, each thought woven with a sense of purpose. What if, rather than simply countering the skepticism, she embraced it? What if the questions coming from doubters served as a launch pad for deeper conversations? In that moment, clarity struck again, sharper and brighter than before. Clara began drafting a series of posts, addressing critical perspectives head-on, not defensively, but with the intent to educate and elevate the discussion. She penned, "Doubt can be a powerful teacher. Let's explore its roots together." This was more than just a rebuttal. It was an invitation for dialogue. She pressed post again, heart pounding in anticipation of the incoming responses. Curiosity, doubt, agreement, or disdain. It was a risk, but clarity brought her comfort. Each interaction shaped her approach. As users began to engage, she discovered something profound about her own capabilities. Clara could navigate complex conversations gracefully, speaking not just from knowledge, but also from personal experience and empathy. Long nights turned into early mornings as she practiced for the workshop, her speaking points drawn from her recent exchanges and her grandfather's teachings. Mornings became her reflection time, where she balanced thoughts of the past with her intentions for the future. She visualized standing before her audience, reminding herself often of her resolve to spark meaningful conversation, to uplift rather than challenge. The day before the workshop, she felt restless. A storm of nerves brewed inside her. She stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing her introduction repeatedly. She could imagine their skeptical faces, the coiled tension in the air. Would they dismiss her entirely? What if she faltered in those crucial moments? Yet another thought slammed into her consciousness. What if her message inspired them? The fear was tangible, yet mingled with burgeoning excitement. In the light of her reflections, she had also uncovered a burning desire to help others see the efficacy of blending old wisdom with modern approaches. That night, Clara penned a final note to herself. Doubt is a compass pointing toward growth. Each brush against the turbulent waters of skepticism taught her more about resilience, about herself. She was not just reclaiming her legacy, she was building a new one in its wake, fitting the pieces together. Few hours remained before she faced the audience, those strangers who held power over her anxiety. As she lay in bed, her mind raced through everything she had prepared. Yet amidst the chaos, a single thought emerged with resolute clarity. It wasn't just about her success anymore. It was about what she could ignite in others. Just as she felt herself drifting off, her phone buzzed once more, pulling her back into reality. A message read, "This better not just be about herbs. What's your secret?" Clara's heart raced anew, a challenge hovering in the air. The time had come to face not only her audience, but also her deeper hesitations about her knowledge and its acceptance. Tomorrow would reveal whether she could transform this brewing storm into a formidable wave of understanding, or if she would crash against the rocky shore of doubt once again. The moment of truth was near. As Clara awoke on the day of the workshop, the sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating a path of purpose. Gone were the flickers of self-doubt. Instead, a fierce determination coursed through her veins. This day would not only mark a pivotal moment in her journey, but also serve as a testament to her unwavering commitment to reclaim her heritage and share the transformative power of herbal medicine. Clara meticulously arranged the space, each detail reflecting the melding of her grandfather's wisdom with her newfound insights. As attendees began to filter in, the initial nervousness was pervaded by an exhilarating energy. Every familiar face mingled with those she did not recognize, each representing a blend of skepticism and curiosity. Their presence solidified the weight of her mission. This was not just a presentation, but a dialogue, a bridge uniting ancient knowledge with modern understanding. At the beginning of her presentation, Clara shared a poignant story about her grandfather, recounting moments spent in the sun-drenched fields harvesting sacred herbs. With the audience's eyes fixed on her, she wove a narrative that gracefully blended personal anecdotes with scientific data. As she spoke, Clara felt that familiar rush of validation. Her words resonated, igniting something within the attendees. This was more than mere facts. It was about cultivating a deeper connection to their environment. With each passing minute, she confronted the skepticism she had once feared. "You might ask why we should trust herbal remedies," Clara stated confidently, "but consider this. Traditional practices date back thousands of years. They've survived and thrived because they work." The logic was undeniable, the connection to her heritage palpable. As she presented her findings on the effectiveness of herbal treatments, her recognition of data's power was bolstered by the profound emotional weight carried within her family's legacy. The room filled with questions, some aimed skeptically, others forged from genuine inquiry. Clara embraced each one, transforming challenges into opportunities for sharing knowledge. She articulated how misconceptions about herbal medicine arose from a societal reliance on quick fixes. She explained how blending science and tradition could pave the way for holistic healing, a concept that resonated with the audience's desire for a deeper understanding of health. As the workshop progressed, Clara could feel the tide shifting. The walls of resistance began to crumble as participants engaged in discussions that enriched the overall experience. They shared their apprehensions and experiences, forming a dialogue that echoed the very principles she stood to defend. Clara's confidence solidified under this newfound connection. She was no longer just an herbalist, she was a facilitator of change, investing in shared knowledge. At the end of the session, Clara invited attendees to share their reflections. One individual stood, voice steady but laced with gratitude. "You transformed my view of herbalism. It isn't just history, it's part of our future." A ripple of applause filled the room, washing over her like an invigorating tide. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had not only communicated her message, but had cemented a community that now recognized the value of the ancient practices she cherished. As the final minutes ticked away, Clara made a frank acknowledgement of her fears, sharing with them the vulnerability she once felt in advocating for ancestral wisdom. In doing so, she unveiled her vulnerability, intertwining it with her triumph to demonstrate growth cultivated through authenticity. Clara realized that her true achievement lay in this transformation, not just her personal victory over self-doubt, but the empowerment of those around her to embrace a dialogue often silenced. When the workshop concluded, Clara stood amid the bustling crowd, resonating with a newfound assurance that she had previously only dreamed of possessing. She had cultivated not just a connection with her audience, but also reclaimed her identity as a healer worthy of recognition. The applause washed over her like sunlight after a storm, leaving her feeling anchored and grounded in her purpose. Emerging from the workshop, Clara looked upward, the sprawling sky vivid with possibility. She had overcome her fears, standing tall as a bridge between generations of knowledge, firmly established in her competence. The path ahead was illuminated, lined with connections forged and friendships nurtured. Achieving this milestone fortified her commitment to the preservation of her culture and initiated a new chapter in her story, a journey born from understanding, dialogue, and unwavering belief in the healing power of nature. Now, dear audience, the moment has come to connect further. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories filled with personal growth and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover stories like Clara's. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Your thoughts matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how powerful overcoming personal challenges can be.